Hello, my name's Andrew, and today we're checking out the Vivobarefoot Tracker Winter Soft Ground. I'm going to be doing a full review on this boot when we get some more snow in upstate New York, but for now it's like muddy and slippery and 32 degrees out, so pretty good conditions for testing this boot. So I'm just going to talk about the features and my first impressions trying it out so far. So for starters, the Tracker Winter has Vivobarefoot's typical wide toe box. It does get a little bit more slim towards the very tip of the toe box, but if you're someone who doesn't want a barefoot boot that looks super barefooty, I really like what Vivobarefoot's doing because they kind of trick you into thinking it's more slim than it actually is, just because of the black around here. You never seen this like slim part. But yeah, it probably won't work for extra wide feet, but for anyone that has medium feet or regular wide feet or even narrow feet, it's going to work really well. In terms of the laces, it's got your typical metal lace loops here, but I like that they've done this kind of like curvy design, because what that does is that when the boot bends, and especially for a thicker boot like this where you can have problems with it being not flexible enough, like you're not going to get that crimping on the laces that you might get if it was just a straight cut. So that's really cool. If you go up a little further, Vivo has their typical boot lace locks. And I like these because you can just kind of like flip the laces on and off really quickly. Like if you need to take the boot off when it's really cold outside and you got some like snow or rocks or whatever inside your boot. So that's always nice. This is so cool. Vivobarefoot has like laser engraved logo in there, and it's just like a cool texture. You can feel it, not that it's the most important detail, but they also have waterproof here, and then tough rubber there as well. So I don't know, I just think it's kind of a cool feature. In terms of the tongue, it is a semi-gusseted tongue, so it's gusseted all the way up to, actually, maybe it's like a 3/4 gusset, I would say. So yeah, really good for waterproofing. And this boot is waterproof. And it's got 3 different layers of waterproofing. So you've got the guard here that comes up from the bottom of the shoe. And then underneath that, there is a second layer of flexible rubber to keep even more water out. So it's kind of like a half rubber boot. You wouldn't want the rubber to go all the way up because then it makes the boot feel really stiff. And these, they're like a midweight boot. They're 509 grams, but if you think about like a traditional snow boot, this is like 860 grams. So still super lightweight, very barefooty. If you look on the inside of the boot, you've got a wool lining, and this I love because a lot of Vivobarefoot's boots have like a cotton insulation or a synthetic, and they work pretty well, but let's face it, wool is the most warm, breathable material on planet Earth that I know of. So I love to have like a comfy wool insulation. But then if you go a little bit further into the boot, you've got kind of like a mixed material here because you've got the synthetic that's a little bit more meshy. So really good breathability. I like the balance of those two because you've got the warmth with the wool, but then a little bit more breathable with the mesh, so you can wear it in different temperatures. And I also got a flashlight because it can be hard to show the inside of the boot, but there is actually, if you can see there's actually wool on the bottom of the boot as well, which is really cool because a lot of times when it gets cold, I will put a wool felt insole into my barefoot boots, but Vivo has already got that put in there. And if you take a look at it again, you can see that it's not just wool, but they've got the mesh. You see how the wool runs through the middle, but then the mesh is on the sides? The cool thing about that is that you've got the warmth in the middle of your foot, but then on the outsides, you've got more breathability, which is nice because then your feet don't get quite as sweaty. And if you go into like a warm store or into a car or something like that, it just gives you a little bit more breathability than straight wool, which can get, kind of hot if you're going into a warmer temperature. Looking around the back, you've got a typical pull tab here, nice and long. You can fit your finger in there. And then they've sculpted the back of the boot out. So when you're hiking, if you're tilting, you get a little bit more range of motion. In terms of the flexibility, the upper is pretty darn flexible. If you compare it to some other barefoot boots, Xero Alpine, Softstar Switchback, they're all pretty soft. I would say in terms of feeling, it gets a little bit more rigid towards the bottom just because you've got two different layers here of waterproofing. You've got the rubber sole, and then you've got the rubber wraparound, and then you've got the leather upper. So, you know, I do feel like maybe a slight pressure around my ankles. But if you're wearing a couple layers of socks, it's not something that's really going to bother you. And I have kind of bony ankles because I have a marathon runner build. So I don't know, most people may not even notice that at all. But yeah, it's a really easy boot to get off because you can pull the tongue so far out, you know. So I really like that because it's kind of a pain to have a taller winter barefoot boot that feels really hard to get in and out of. So yeah, the flexibility on the ankle is great, but let's take a look at the sole. The sole is 7.5 millimeters, and it's what you would call an aggressive sole because it's really good for wet terrain. But it's still really flexible, you know? Really good flexibility vertically, and quite a bit of flexibility horizontally as well. And I like that because some of the other thicker barefoot boots I've tried, like the hardcore winter ones, like the Xero Alpine, they've got basically no flexibility horizontally. You know, some good flexibility vertically, but I like to have flexibility in all directions, you know, so my boots feel like walking barefoot. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Because why would you want a thick, clunky boot like this if you're trying to go for a barefoot feeling outside? In terms of how the tread is shaped, you've got different tread patterns in the front and the back. So if you're going up a hill, the arrows are pointing this way. So what that's going to do is grip on your forefoot when you're going up the hill. And then when you turn around and you go down the hill, you've got the tread pattern going in the opposite direction. So if you're going down a hill like this, you're gonna land on your heel, and then it's gonna catch the mud or whatever ice, that kind of stuff that you're going through, and make sure that you're not gonna slip down the hill. And I tested this out on a hill that was probably like a 70-degree grade, you know, something like this. And it just like chewed it up. It chewed the hill up. It had no problems whatsoever. The Vivobarefoot Tracker Winter Soft Ground. Vivobarefoot loves to have complicated names for their shoes, but I guess it's because they have so many features, you know? But anyways, yeah, really good for going up and yeah, I had it tilted wrong there for going up and down muddy hills. I'm really interested to see how it'll work when there's snow on the ground, but yeah, from seeing how it worked with the mud so far, I don't know, it should be really good. And I've been kind of looking for a boot like this because I have been wearing like lightweight boots in the winter for hiking when it gets really icy. And I remember this one day where I was walking along this ridge, right? And I was wearing just like thin Hanzajayas, which have basically no tread on them at all. And I took this step and there's like a ravine down here. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm gonna fall. Like I couldn't even move. I was just stuck there and I had to like slowly get down onto my hands and knees and like crawl off of the ridge. Because I realized it was like, oh my God, I totally need a barefoot boot that has more grip than this. So yeah, I'm really excited about taking the tracker out because it'll finally be something where it just has the kind of extreme grip that I need. And it is spaced out a lot more, which is something that you'll see in a more aggressive boot. So it holds on better on wet terrain, and it's also easier to get the mud out. With something like the BeLenka winter boot where the lugs are a little bit closer together, this thing can kind of be a pain sometimes to get the mud out. So yeah, I like a wet ground boot with a lot of spacing. In terms of the waterproofing, like I took this wading into a frozen stream and it seemed fine. Yeah, like, and then I went out and walked for another hour after that and my feet didn't get wet. So it seems to me like the waterproofing is really good. I mean, I wouldn't just stand there like submerging any waterproof boot unless it's just a single piece of rubber boot, because eventually, you know, like the water is going to find some way in. And it can just, you know, it can deteriorate the glue and stuff like that. So with any waterproofing boot or waterproof boot, you just want to be like respectful of it, you know, like have it do what you need it to do, but don't like abuse it. You know what I mean? and it'll last longer. But yeah, you can treat this. You can treat the leather upper with waterproofing spray, which Vivo Barefoot has on their website, or with just like plain old beeswax, which I really like as well. Yeah, what else? Anything else that I want to say about this boot? I think the ankle is really nice. It has this like nice padding to it. They've even put some like micro perforations that you can see there, which is cool, which makes it just a little bit more breathable. In terms of how it feels for walking, you know, it's like pretty decent. It's only 75. It's only 7.5 millimeters, you know, so you get a lot of flexibility, some really good ground feel. I can feel pretty small stones with this, you know. It's not like a 4 millimeter barefoot shoe where it's just, you know, almost nothing, but there's a lot of space in between the lugs, so you get a lot of ground feel versus something like the Xero Alpine, which, yeah, it definitely feels a little bit more thick and clunky, and I'm really not getting that much ground feel. So, yeah, I think one more detail, it's just like a small thing, but Vivo has some really cool small details. I don't know if we can get it to focus because the lace is so small, but let's see. I don't know, it might be too small to focus. That's okay. I'll try to show you in the full review, but they've just got some, I think it's visibility reflective string in there. I don't know. I'll show you in the full review, but it's just cool. Vivo has lots of cool details. So yeah, one other thing, they do come with, if you need it, a thermal insole. And I find this adds a little bit too much thickness sometimes, especially if the boot's already thick. So I tend to use a wool insole, but for these, like for the Tracker Winter, I don't even think that you need anything for most days unless it's like, you know, 10 degrees or something like that. Because like I said, it does have the wool built in, which is great. Let's talk about alternatives. Probably the closest boot would be the Xero Alpine. The Xero Alpine is 9 millimeters thick, so it's a little bit thicker than the Tracker Winter. It has the same kind of super aggressive tread with those kind of pointed V's like I was talking about in the front and the back. It's a little bit stiffer boot, which might make it good for like snowshoeing if you want something, or like the name suggests, like an alpine type trek where it's super unstable, very slippery, and it's just like chunky ice that's really not comfortable to wear with a thinner, more flexible barefoot shoe. And these are waterproof. They have a fairly comparable toe box. It's wide, but not super wide. And yeah, synthetic insulation. So I would say it's not quite as warm as the Tracker Winter from Vivo, but anytime you have synthetic insulation, it's usually a little bit better for slightly higher temperatures. But yeah, you can layer socks in this, whatever else. Yeah, like I said, it is a bit stiff, you know, like I don't like walking in these as much as I like walking in the Tracker Winters. But, you know, it has its uses for really, really nasty days. Next would be the BeLenka Winter Barefoot Boot, and this is super flexible. It's a little bit more flexible than the Tracker Winter Vivo. It has a similar type aggressive tread, but like I was talking about, sometimes it's annoying because it's a little bit close together and it can get mud stuck in there, but it is very good for walking on snow and slush and mud and that kind of thing. But I do really like the flexibility with this. It's a leather upper, similar to the Tracker Winter, and it's fully waterproof. Another boot that's fully waterproof. It's also fully lined with merino wool. So this is the warmest barefoot boot that I own. It's really good down even to 0 degrees, and has an extra wide toe box as well. So definitely wider than most of the Vivo Barefoot shoes. Yeah, but it is, it's not quite as breathable or cool for like warmer days. You know, like if you get above 30 with this boot, it's not going to be as versatile as the Tracker Winter, which is a little bit more balanced for different temperatures. So moving on to the third alternative, that would be the Softstar Switchback. This is the lightest out of the three. So just in terms of weight, the Tracker Winter is 509 grams. The BeLenka Winter Boot is 449 grams, and then the Switchback is 383 grams, and the Alpine is 370 actually, which is pretty amazing. This is actually a fairly light boot for how sturdy it is. So that's one interesting thing about the Alpine. But yeah, switching back to the Switchback. This is a very light boot, also extremely flexible. This is the most flexible, kind of like hardcore winter boot that I own. It has a fully leather upper. This is just extremely flexible. Like you can run with these boots, which, yeah, you can't really do with the other three. Maybe a little bit with the BeLenka Winter, but it's a little bit more heavy feeling. So the Softstar Switchback is great for trail running in the winter. It's not fully waterproof, it's water resistant, so that's something to consider. I find I really like this weight. It's fully lined with merino wool like the BeLenka Winter, but it's not as thick, so it is more breathable. It has a better temperature range. Like you can get down to 0 of these if you stack up some socks, some wool socks in there, and add a, wool felt insole in there, you know. But they also make this in extra wide. Like this is just the regular width because I just have medium feet, so I don't really need it. But yeah, they do make like an extra wide primal version, which you could check out if you really need that space. It has a 9.5 millimeter tread on it, and 3 millimeters of that is actually like a softer layer, like almost a midsole layer. So it just provides a tiny bit of padding. And then underneath you have a Vibram Mega Grip tread, which is basically the best tread in the world, in my opinion. It's not quite as aggressive for wet terrain as like the Vivobarefoot Tracker Winter, but it's a really good balanced boot that you can just do basically anything in cold weather. So in the middle, it's got like a little bit more aggressive tread, and then on the outer part of it, it's got a little bit of a wider tread for handling harder ground. So I love that balance, you know, like it's a really versatile boot. Yeah, I mean, Vibram is basically the most durable rubber in the world, but when it comes to barefoot boots, they just last forever anyway. So I don't know. It's not that big of a deal, honestly, especially for a sole this thick, like something like the Tracker. This thing is going to last for 5,000 miles at least. One other thing that I forgot to mention about aggressive treads is that you don't want to take them out on like roads as much unless it's a road that's covered with like ice or snow, because there's less surface area here. So this is going to wear down a lot faster on a hard surface versus ice or snow or mud. So yeah, like the name suggests, I would primarily use it for softer ground versus something like the Switchback, which is a little bit more versatile for using on both types of terrains. But you know, it's not going to give you quite as much grip on like a muddy hill as the Vivo Tracker Winter soft grounds would. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Tracker Winter. And if you want to pick up a pair, you can get 20% off Vivobarefoot in the month of December with the code FULTY20. But if you see this video after December and you're like, damn it, I still want the discount, you can always use FULTY10, and that'll give you 10% off of your Vivobarefoot purchase. Or you can check out Revivo, where Vivo has a lot of refurbished styles, and you can get those up to 50% off. So yeah, lots of ways to save money with Vivobarefoot. But yeah. If you want to browse more barefoot shoes, you can always check barefootwear.org, my website, where there's a finder tool where you can sort by thickness and width and any other kind of metric that you can think of, which makes it really easy to find your perfect pair of barefoot shoes. And yeah, other than that, if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. And thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.